Bones podcast.
Episode 2.
Episode 1 is already on YouTube, so you can see it there. The first one was great. The first one, though, we did from our couch. So
this is our other couch.
It's our other couch. So the plan for Muay Thai Bones, as we developed it, was really we have these great conversations all the time about Muay Thai. Not just talking about like specific stuff, but also expanding into really big ideas. And we're like, maybe we should just film these and share these with everyone else. And a lot of times we have these conversations on the road. So twice a month, Sylvie and I drive from Pattaya to Chiang Mai so she can fight. Chiang Mai is the best fighting in all of Thailand for women, probably best fighting in the world. Yeah. It's worth 2 10-hour drives a month. And we're like...
That's 4 10-hour drives.
Yeah, 4 10-hour to 40 hours a month. So we're thinking, well, let's just chat it up and record it and share it with everybody on YouTube. And hopefully, if it's successful, if you guys like it, then we can move it over to iTunes or SoundCloud and all those other places where people are requesting it already. What we're trying to do in this podcast is talk about a variety of subjects. So if you're not really interested in what we're first talking about, just skip ahead 15 minutes or something and there'll be something else totally different.
Yeah, we were pretty amazed in our first podcast from our couch. We had a list of things we were going to talk about, and we got not to many of them because we talk so much about each of them because it's interesting and it touches on all these different things.
Totally. We got an hour and 48 minutes up on the first one, and that we were like shooting for an hour.
Yeah, we talk a lot.
Okay, so the first topic is an interesting one. We were just in Chiang Mai, and the first topic is about how it's difficult. Sylvie gets, and pretty much anybody online that lives in Thailand gets repeated requests for what gym should I go to? Recommendations. And first of all, it's almost impossible to recommend a gym for somebody online.
Responsibly.
To responsibly. It's a little bit like, it's almost like which woman or man should I marry?
Or what college should I go to?
What college should I go to?
What do you study? Where do you want to live? What's your budget?
And not only that, we can't interview somebody, every person that contacts you. We're not like a placement service, right?
But
it's pretty stressed.
We think it's important to actually give someone a good experience. So there are people who, when you're like, where should I go? You're like, my favorite gym is this. And that's not good for everybody. So we don't want to give these blind recommendations just because we want to drive business to one gym.
Anyways, we put up, there is a form, Eight Limits Us form post that we have up where Sylvie describes various gyms that we tend to recommend.
My list of recommended gyms and their various aspects so that knowing your own motives, needs, requirements, you can look at why I like these gyms and which one matches better for you.
But there's an added complication about this. This is a serious thing, and we don't even know the answer to this. There's an added complication to this, which is even really good gyms, like gyms that do a great job and are fairly consistent, gyms go through ups and downs all the time. Sylvie's own gym in Pattaya goes up and down. Up and downs can be functions of, well, how many people are going to that gym in that month?
What trainers they have at the time.
The crews that are available is a huge aspect. Whichever crew you can be at a shitty gym and with a great crew and have a great experience. Mm-hmm. Or you can be at a great gym with a shitty crew. You just got stuck with them, and you have a shitty experience.
It's also worth mentioning that my gym I'm at long term, so the ups and downs I ride. But if you're at a gym for 1 month, 2 months, and you happen to hit it at a bad time, that sucks. Like, I can deal with a downturn because you ride it through. Like, it's the whole roller coaster.
Well, you not only ride it through, we're very aggressive in going to get additional stuff. If suddenly you don't have sparring partners,
I just go find them.
We go to Rambaugh's gym and spar over there.
Yeah.
In addition to what you're doing, if you're not getting the pad work you want or the clinch work you want, we're very aggressive about supplementing, which not everybody can do when you're visiting Thailand.
Yeah.
So there's tremendous sensitivity to the question, what gym should I go to? But from our end, it's almost impossible to answer. There's another dimension to it, which is, okay, if you really want to know what gym to go to, you need to contact people who are at that gym now.
Yes.
Because you need in-time feedback. We've had pretty good experiences at Chem's Muay Thai Gym. We recommend Chem's, but we're not there now.
Yeah.
We don't know what trainers are there. We don't know the mood of the gym. Gyms change a lot. But one of the things we wanted to bring up, which is a little bit difficult, is we just left Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai is going through a resurgence, right? Not even a resurgence, a surge of popularity. Partly because of how we write about female fighting there. Part of it is that Chiang Mai itself is developing as a tourist destination there's a lot of money and development going into it from Chinese sources, and so the lifestyle there is actually really awesome. And I think a lot of people are a little bit tired of the Phuket experience. It might be perfect for some people, but for some people who want to spend a few months, Chiang Mai has a very comfortable lifestyle.
It's very fight friendly.
Very fight friendly. So part of the problem is we've started getting feedback from various people at particular Chiang Mai gyms that we recommend and that we honestly still recommend, but they haven't had positive experiences. That some of these bigger gyms have been overbooked.
Yeah, it's high season.
Yeah. But not only that, they're surging in popularity beyond what they've experienced 2 years ago.
Right, and what they can handle.
And what they're ready to handle, right? And so, this is part of the thing. In Thai culture and also in I don't know what to call it, like Thai Farang culture in Thailand, it's just rude to say that a gym isn't doing well now, right? There's something wrong. It feels wrong to be like, such and such gym, yeah, they're not, I wouldn't go there right now.
Yeah. It feels unfair, it feels shit-talking, all this stuff, but there's a truth to it with the caveat right now. Yeah. Like, right now is not a good time to be there, from what we've heard.
Right.
And that may change in
a month or a week.
Yeah.
It might be that a top crew will return, or the gym owner has not been around as much, and now they're going to around and they're going to put everything all together.
Or the group of people who are training there will
change. Yeah, like exactly. Sometimes a big group might move through a gym and change the pad holding times or structures. But this is the thing. If you write in a post, this gym, blah, 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 some negative thing, which was accurate, it doesn't stop. Like 6 months from now, someone reads that.
Well, there's also this delay, right? Which is one of the reasons it's very hard to recommend a gym, is because of this delay.
Yeah.
We're like, this gym's great, and then by the time you get there, it's having a rough spell.
Yeah.
Same thing if you say it's having a rough spell.
Yes.
By the time people are not going there, it might be okay now. Like, it might be good now.
Or it goes through some rough patches. It feels the effects of people losing interest, so then it starts getting its act together.
Yeah.
They hire a better crew, a set of crews, or they're like, we should be more focused on running. Whatever the thing is, gyms respond, they're living things. And so we saw this with Lana when you were there, that it got some shitty reviews several years before you got there.
Yes.
Right? And so suddenly Lana sucked.
Yeah.
And it probably did when the reviews were written, right?
It sucked a few times while I was there too.
Yeah. But the thing is, people were reading those reviews and they simply had no idea what Lana was like anymore.
Yeah.
It changes so fast in Thailand.
Yeah.
Also, in talking a little bit about the etiquette of talking about gyms, like in the West, it's very common to be like, the brutally honest Yelp reviewer customer.
Right.
Like, you say the chicken was overdone and the portions were small, blah, blah, blah. This is normal conversation. In Thailand, that's not appropriate.
Yes.
Like, you don't publicly shame people, and I know we've heard stories of Westerners have written some pretty harsh things and had some pretty rough consequences in Thailand as a result.
Yeah.
So it's just something you don't do. Also, it's something you don't want to do. For instance, I remember when you were at Lana several years ago, it wasn't in a great place. The Padman and Krus didn't feel appreciated at that time that you were there.
Yeah.
You were getting pretty good training because you were long-term.
Right.
But we would see people come through and not get great training.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a weird ethical thing. Like, should you be warning people to not, like, this might not be for you?
Yeah.
And we kind of were quiet about it, right?
Well, it's also, we have 3 examples of women who went to gyms that they have been to before and had positive experiences at.
Right.
And then when they were there the second time, or 5th time, or whatever it was like, this time is not good.
Yeah.
And having the invitation, go somewhere else. In these cases, all of them have come and trained with me, but that's not because my gym is better. My gym is not for everybody. I actually don't recommend my gym for a lot of people. And it's like, part of the honesty of being able to say this gym is going through a patch that's not great is to give the opportunity, go somewhere else. Like, you're not like, fuck you, this gym sucks now forever. The ability to go somewhere else and be like, that's okay, we try again another time, like whatever the thing is actually an honesty towards what that relationship in the first place was. And it was good.
There's another dimension too. A gym might go through a rough patch if you're somebody who's going to be there for 3 days. But if you're a long-term investment in the gym, maybe it's not rough for them.
Yes.
So it's very hard to kind of be able to assess, and I totally understand why you might want to try to contact us and figure this out, because when we came out here the first time, there was almost nothing on the internet, and we were just begging Sylvie Charbonneau at Lana to like tell us little things. And basically we went to Lana because, well, if Sylvie Charbonneau is 100 pounds and fighting 50 fights there, something's working.
My chances
right?
are good, yeah.
So one method to go about is to find people online who are somewhere around what you are. There's some point of identity.
Yeah.
And you're like, if it's working for them, it's probably working for what might work for me. And then maybe reach out to that person and be like, blah, blah, blah. Or another complication is, if anybody's long-term at a gym, they're probably not going to tell you that gym is shitty.
Yes.
Even if it currently is.
Yes.
So yeah, you want to hear from somebody who's at a gym right now, but they're also not necessarily the most trustworthy thing. What was interesting is at the time at Lana, I remember people were accusing you of being a sponsored fighter and talking up the gym at some points, and you were not a sponsored fighter back then.
No.
And we tried to talk pretty honestly about it, but in those few rough patches, it just did not feel appropriate to be like warning people off.
Yeah.
So there's no real answer to this. I would love to set up some kind of like review system
that's active.
Like, you get reviews from people from gyms within 2 or 3 weeks of when you're looking, but it's so complicated because somebody who's not like you might have had a shitty experience and you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
You might end up with a better crew. Or people have like, I'm going to champion this gym online, whether or not it's good or not at the particular time. Things that might help. Ideally, when you come to Thailand, you want to be able to train yourself as much as possible, which means you want to be able to do bag work hardcore. You want to be able to get the most out of pad work. You want to be the least amount of my gym is going to boot camp me, right? I know the fantasy about Thailand is that they're going to boot camp you, but honestly, the more independent you are and the more you're able to train yourself, the more likely you're going to have a fulfilling experience. If you end up in a shitty gym that's going through a rough patch, find the crew who cares. There's probably one, and beeline on them. Get them to ask them questions, and then visibly train what they tell you on the bag. Because this is something that crews all the time in Thailand give gems to everyone, and then nobody follows them or trains them, and they stop giving them. So if you show your work in asking things, you can take an average gym and make it an amazing experience for yourself.
And it gives esteem to that trainer.
Totally.
Like being a pad holder or a crew is not a high position. It's grunt work. But when you show interest and respect what they're showing you, and you like demonstrate that you're doing that work, it elevates the rank of basically a grunt position.
Yes.
Nobody dislikes it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Wait, I'm sorry, before you...
Yeah, go.
We have for a very long time recommended or warned people against paying in advance.
Oh, that's the other thing. I understand some of these very popular gyms want you to pay in advance.
Online
and
packages.
You might not even be able to get access to them unless you pay in advance. And I'm sorry for gym, if anybody is a gym owner or gym participant that is like, we really want this, it's not a good idea, guys. Even the best gyms, like gyms that do well, you might hit a rough patch. You want to have the option of stepping out.
You can come for 3 days and then pay for
They might say there's no room. There's some gyms that would be like, there's no room, we're full. You have to pay in advance. If it's really important to you to have a super positive experience, go to a location. This is what I would recommend you as well. Go to a location, train there for a day. Go to another gym, train at least to 2 gyms for a day. I would go to 3 if you're going to stay for a couple of months. And just feel the vibe. Like, can you picture yourself staying here? If people did this more, I think the gyms themselves would improve too, because they would treat walk-in people like, I gotta convert this person over to my experience.
That is good advice, and I'm not saying not that. It's not possible to do that at all gyms. If you're in Chiang Mai, you can go to a bunch. Phuket, you can go to a bunch. If you go to Chems, there's nothing else around.
Well, that's true. If you go to Chems, you gotta dive in on it.
Yeah.
It's a gym we recommend, but maybe not for everybody in every situation.
Yeah.
And it's up on a mountain. But most circumstances, Chiang Mai and Phuket island gyms,
Pattaya,
you have a lot of, and Pattaya is starting to develop a lot of gyms. Bangkok, I don't know, maybe.
You can get around.
You can jump around.
Yeah.
I would just be like 2 gyms minimum.
Yeah.
You want that experience. When you walk in, you know whether you can stay or not. And if you've already paid in advance, you're just locked in. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough thing to travel all that time. Maybe it's your only time, your first time ever coming to Thailand. You don't want to get stuck in that. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to switch up to another topic, which is related, which is my Kru Syndrome blog post.
Yeah.
If you find this interesting, I wrote a whole guest post over on Sylvie's blog, 8 Limbs Us. You can read it over there. I'll try to link it in the description. Kru Syndrome, it's specifically for women. It's something that we've noticed over time. I think it was Kristen who's like, I want to know Sylvie's opinion on this, because I wrote the article from my own perspective. Sylvie's too crazy. What?
Well, it's written from your perspective in having watched me over years.
And
so it has a lot to do with me anyway.
Totally.
But I actually am a woman, whereas you're watching.
This is true.
I'm a lady.
And that's actually a big part of it. But what I noticed about Kru Syndrome, just to roughly
we'll just say what
encapsulate it, is this thing that women seem to experience, serious women dedicated to Muay Thai, when they come over to Thailand, there's this beautiful acceptance of them as a fighter, in Thai fight culture. Now, Thai fight culture is something that I think of as fighting is embraced within the culture beyond even human beings. There's chicken fighting. If you're an animal rights person, you might have feelings about this. There's beetle fighting, seasonal beetle fighting in the north that people gamble on. The whole gambling, fighting culture, I mean, people have problems with gambling and lumpini. Gambling and fighting goes together in Thailand for probably 200 years.
Forever.
So, as a woman, when you come into the gym world and the fighting world in Thailand, you are strangely and uniquely embraced in a way that you probably have never experienced in your life. Even if you've been accepted in the West, there's a different feeling about that. And maybe to break this up into little pieces so I don't just go on a long thing, what is that feeling of being embraced? Just that positive good thing without it being the shadow and the complications.
There's a difficulty that women face anywhere in the world, in gyms or in fight community or whatever, which is that there is some degree to which you are having to validate yourself or justify yourself.
Wait 1 second. Where's that timer, baby?
You had it on the phone.
Oh, here it is. Okay, good. I didn't mean to distract you from that, but I want to make sure we don't get cut off. So this validation
women
that
have to justify themselves. Men generally don't.
Well, that's not fair, because men also have to justify them in the sense they have to prove themselves manly as fighters, and there's always a pressure. Oh, look at that. Okay, wait 1 second. Restart. I'm gonna stop this. Okay, continuing off from what we were saying. I was saying that men, I think it's unfair to say that men don't have to justify themselves, because men always are having to prove their manliness as fighters. But what men don't face, that women do face, it's an additional hurdle, is that there's a categorical break with a woman that puts them forever kind of outside of fighting. Right? Would that be fair to say?
Sure.
You disagree a little bit?
I think you're being...
I'm just saying men have a pressure when they come to Thailand.
Sure, yeah. Whatever.
Don't put it down.
The level of that pressure is high.
Right.
Like it's up here.
Yeah.
This is already accepted, and then you have this like deeper level.
Yes.
Women, it's like, can you even fucking be in this space? Like, are you even allowed in this space?
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to justify just being in a room that men do not have to do.
Yeah, not even,
So, that is the background. And again, this can be very subtle. There are women who don't feel this, and so they say, I've never experienced that.
Yeah. And I would say that also this is one of the pleasures that men have when coming to Thailand, is as men, they're accepted within a male space as men.
Yes.
It feels good.
But, so, because women have to justify, validate, whatever, like this, I want to be here, let me be here thing, when you have a crew who, by position, is someone you're trying to please, someone you're trying to prove yourself to, someone whose pride you want to stoke, all of these different things, when they embrace you, it feels so good.
Well, what does it feel like? What is that? It is just like, wow, I've like hit heaven, fight heaven, or
no,
oh my God,
like
the current I always swim against isn't there anymore.
No, it's still there, but it's this. Yes, you are a fighter. Yes, you are moldable. Yes, you are coachable. Yes, you are interesting to me, and so to feel that is kind of druggy. Where I'm a pretty, like, I know what morally and in values I think is good and bad, and kind of like I will put myself in that position or I won't.
Okay.
I totally compromise things because I want that feeling of acceptance.
Okay.
That from a like ethical feminist standpoint, I'm like, no, I don't really like that. But for my Kru New.
But
right?
But I want to stay on the positive part.
I am talking about the positive part.
Yeah.
So, Kru New means a great deal to me. he is a good man. Like,
Totally.
I do not have to compromise moral things in order to be in alignment with him. He's a very moral, ethical, great man.
Yeah.
I love him very much. But I have to have this element of resistance that is not... It would feel so good to just put myself in his hands and be like, you make my fights, you train me to be the way you want me to be, you decide who my opponents should be. Like, giving yourself over, that many men can do because their coaches have experience in this and everything is designed for men, so that experience can be very good.
Okay, but I want to stay on the positive.
If I were to put myself in that position, I would fight like once a year. So
okay, where's the positive though?
The positive is that it feels so good to be accepted and put yourself in this line of like, this is how male fighters are treated. Like,
With a kind equality, basically. Like,
male fighters are given good opportunities. They're sometimes not given the best opportunities because their crew wants them to do this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, but let's stay on the positive.
Tell me what you want me to answer.
What does it feel like, this acceptance that happens in Thailand? Like, I think that's really beyond what happens elsewhere, because this feeling of acceptance is the thing that drives Kru Syndrome.
It feels like you can breathe, like you can rest for a second. That's what it feels like. Is like, I've been trying so hard to catch up to the wagon. Like, I'm on foot and everyone's on the wagon, and you've been running and you get close to it and you're like,
And it's kind of unanticipated, because you feel like you're just going to be running after the wagon all the time.
Man, you are going to be running after the fucking wagon.
Yeah, but the positive, we're going on the positive.
It feels like a relief.
Feels like a relief. Okay, so Kru Syndrome is the consequence of that feeling of relief for women. And maybe for men on a different story, but that's not the story we're telling. There's a complication that happens when a crew embraces you in Thailand. It has to do with the nature of face saving and shame and hierarchy in gyms that, as Westerners, when we first come, we don't see at all. It just looks like a fucking Disneyland of fight stuff, right? The crew, what will invariably happen is the crew will take you very seriously, see all this potential. They'll see how hard you're training. Women train super hard, so the crew feels respected, right? And then what often happens is you're going to have your fight, or your 2 fights, or your 3 fights. And you're not, because you were not raised as a Thai boy. You have not absorbed all the work that they've put into you. And you do great on the pads, but pads is not fighting.
Yeah.
And the crew, you look fucking awesome, and then in the fight you look, why didn't you
Or you just don't teep the way you teep on a pad.
Totally, but you underperform.
Yeah.
And you're gonna underperform. One of the hardest things that happens is that your crew is gonna be verbally harsh to you, could be very verbally harsh, or will emotionally distance themselves from you. They might even walk out of your corner, like not be associated with you. We've seen pretty extreme examples of this.
My first fight was that.
Yeah, totally. It's a very painful place that the female fighter who experienced this beautiful relief from fight culture and the nature of Thai gyms then feels the relief taken away.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is, most often, the female fighter feels bad. Female fighters, by my experience, tend to be extremely self-critical.
We're also really good at feeling shame.
They feel shame, right? And so they put they take all the criticism on themselves, and then they train even harder. And they're like, I have to get that fucking block up or whatever.
And you have to, like, reprove yourself.
Yes. And the crew often will be like, she's back. She's bringing in all this energy and this devotion. Next fight, same thing.
Yep.
Oh my God. And it becomes a vicious circle. It can. it depends on the quality of the crew. Some crews, especially crews that are like really high status crews, they have no tolerance for this kind of loss of face. And they can be very harsh. Some crews are like pretty sensitive. We can't even talk about the complication of romantic involvement. I don't even know what that life is like when there starts to become a connection between you and your crew.
We're talking about women who literally date.
Yeah, or there could be actual sexual relations, or it could be flirtation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, this is something we don't really enter into and haven't really observed closely.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It might be a totally different experience.
It is a complicating factor, to say the least.
Yeah, but it might alleviate some of these other Kru Syndrome things.
Yeah.
But okay, so I want to get to this larger thought of what has Kru Syndrome been like for you? Like, in your experience, Kristen's idea. I want to hear from Sylvie on this.
It's hard for me to separate out what is particular to crews in Thailand or even crews in Muay Thai or whatever versus something that I've had my whole life, which is that I am a people pleaser to a degree. I want to make people happy. So not wanting to disappoint your crew seems like it is
Part of
something that people would feel across the board. Men don't want to disappoint their crews, like any of this stuff, but there's a degree to which it's like, by that being a factor of my personality, I cannot ever hit the mark of satisfying, making my crews happy or whatever the thing is. Like,
and part of that is in Thai culture, a crew will always have a critical comment towards even the fucking best fighters.
Yeah, this is a weird thing about Thai culture that took me a quick minute to catch up on, and I had to learn Thai for it to kind of catch up to me. They will talk shit to your face and sing your praises behind your back, which is the opposite of Western culture. And they'll be harsh to you because they always want you to be better. The totally stereotypical Asian dad, Asian mom thing where they're like, you didn't get an A+, but it was an A kind of thing. Like, it feels harsher than I think it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And there is a degree to which
well, if you mix this in with I'm a people pleaser, it's a volatile combination.
But
right?
what's complicated about it for me personally, and I'm sure other people have this too, I have many teachers, but for example, I go fight a fight and I feel shitty about it coming out of the ring, and Karahat, who's one of the most generous that's okay dudes in the world, will tell you, she fought better than last time, even though I like got my ass kicked or whatever, and I will feel horrible, like I cannot make him happy, and he's not displeased.
Well, that's not a great example of Kru Syndrome, because you're enacting Kru Syndrome all on your own, because Karahat is maybe the only one we've ever met who does not distance himself and put harshness on you as a student.
He doesn't shame at all.
At all. Like, it is fucking unreal. I think it's just because he's so fucking amazing that he does not feel, and he's a little bit on the outside of Thai social status, that he doesn't lose anything if you lose or don't do great.
Right.
He doesn't, whereas a crew who's like fucking like the top crew in a gym, they lose status when their student doesn't perform well.
Right. But why I used him as an example is that I put it there.
Yeah.
So, Karahat is fucking superstar, so anytime I go fight, it is mentioned that he's in my corner. Yeah. And so I put it on myself that I'm representing Karahat, and then I don't perform up to that task, and I feel like I've blemished him.
Right.
Which is the reality of Kru Syndrome in a lot of cases. Like, if you're fighting under a crew's name, with a gym, whatever, like, there's this whole, you are not meeting the standard of representing my name, which can have super harsh examples of crews we know who won't even let you fight because they think you're not up to par, and then gyms that are like, you're always just trying to.
Well, one of the problems of Kru Syndrome is then, even if you're successful, like we've talked about, you didn't fight up to potential. Even if you're successful and you do fight well, Krus then very often will start to narrow your fight choices so that they can maintain the sense of dominance that you have.
Right.
They might become picky and choosy of your future opponents.
Demand high kadua.
Demand high kadua or big side bets or advantageous weight advantages or whatever it is. They start to enter the game of like, I have a special something that nobody can beat, but only under circumstances I want to control. So even very good fighters might find themselves with fewer and fewer fight opportunities. And for us, this is one reason why we've created a system of distance to almost all Krus, because we don't want, if we let any one particular Kru control your fight path, you wouldn't be fighting ever at all.
I would have 20 fights.
20 fights instead of 200. You gotta speak up from the mic.
Yeah.
Nobody can do what Sylvie's done. It's a perfect storm of what we've done. Like, it couldn't be duplicated. We couldn't have done it on purpose. But part of what we're sharing about Kru Syndrome is these are not bad things that are going to happen to you no matter what. These are tendencies within the culture and within female fighter personalities that can box you in, and you might find yourself in already. And if you look out for them, you can kind of like massage them a little bit, right?
Yeah, that is the reason to explore the Kru Syndrome theory or elements or whatever the thing is because by being aware of it, you have this kind of topography to know, okay, that's a steep part, that's a less steep part, so that you can, for yourself, figure out how to navigate that. There's nothing about knowing that the Kru Syndrome exists that keeps you from ever touching it.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it that solves it. But knowing, oh my God, this is not just me, or this is not just this, or whatever, helps you make decisions.
But not only this, I'm just telling you, if you come to a gym in Thailand and somebody is super high on you and you get a big feeling of relief from acceptance, understand it's not cost-free.
Yeah.
That high expectations will come necessarily with the come down. So anytime there's somebody who's like super excited by Sylvie, we like move 2 steps to the outside of that. It's still good. Like, our solution is find the baby bear position with people with enthusiasm.
Give a concrete example of that so that people know.
You have one in mind? Or do you know?
If I go to train with somebody for filming for Patron or whatever the thing is, where I like step foot into a gym where they're not really familiar with me, they don't know who I am. Yeah. And then
they're like, holy fuck.
They're like, what are you? Like, this is incredible. And they get really excited because they had no idea what to expect. And I'm this 100-pound fucking grenade that comes in. Yeah. That's very exciting at first because they don't know anything of what I am. And so they get really high on it. And maybe one of the more recent examples was Krongsak, when we went to train with him. And he's like, what do you fight at? Can you come to France?
Can you fight a Nisamex?
All of these things. That's
10
like,
kilos.
That's like, I know you're very excited, but that level of excitement means that the risk of disappointment or not meeting or whatever thing is just, it's like, this is pricey. Like, I can feel the cost of this.
Pricey, yeah.
And so we're kind of like, okay, take a step back, calm down. Like, let's not jump into this. Whereas it feels really good. That it's very flattering. It's very like, oh my God, this person is very enthusiastic about me. Of course that feels good. But there's just a little bit of a like, all right, let's be realistic about this. I told you when we were talking about this last time. Right. Unfilmed. It's like the new boyfriend or whatever who's like really everything's going really well, all your dates are great, they're very into you, they're very like sweet and all this stuff, and then once you're like, okay, let's be exclusive, suddenly they're super possessive, and you're like, where did that come from? Is that you do not have to have a romantic relationship with your trainer for that almost exact feeling to exist. They become very possessive even within the gym. They don't want other trainers working with you. They don't like...
Yeah, Emma ran into a big problem where she went and trained with another trainer who was giving her better interactions after many years. This was back at another gym, not the one she's at now, and it caused a fucking rift in the gym because there's hidden hierarchies within a gym also. One of the things that we did at Lana originally when we started getting into these little Kru Syndrome cul-de-sacs is we tried to diversify right away, getting input from various trainers, so the stake within a gym with your performance was spread out among various people, as opposed to a single, molded by a single genius crew.
This is very tricky.
Yeah.
It's not a universal, everyone should do this.
Yeah.
It can totally sour the entire relationship you have with the gym. Like, it's...
You think so?
I think it could if you did it wrong or if you weren't careful. But
I disagree.
Kevin,
I mean, you could be careful. You could be careful. You don't have to be on tiptoes. The key is, when you enter a gym and you start working with a crew, ask another crew to show you a low kick, throw it on the back 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to create, if you allow I am the product of crew so-and-so, you might find your options narrowed.
Make it clear you're still seeing other people early on.
Kind of. Keep everything fresh. Is there anything you want to add about your experiences in the past of when you had Kru Syndrome? Like, we had it at Lana. I don't know. You're non-responsive.
I don't know. It's a huge, complex thing that people experience very differently.
Yeah, how you experienced it. I like Den. We got it stuck with Den a little bit. And kind of hit a dead end, and we went to Dang.
I think that for me, again, it's that kind of druggy thing where it's so enticing and romantic, this idea that there is a trainer who takes you on. It's totally the, like, kung fu epic. It's got this kind of...
Yeah.
I don't know, like... The one trainer and the one student and the bond you have is so strong, and it's like... It's built into the romanticized version of martial arts that we think of in the West. And so I think that there's a romance to it that we are guided to, and as women it feels really good because it's like I'm accepted or I am justified. And so I think that I'm drawn towards it even though I know better.
Even though you know much better. But we do a pretty good job. And actually, I'm going to toot my own horn. I'm really sensitive to Kru Syndrome.
Yes.
So I will often steer you out of crash orbits.
Yes.
Like, to me, it's about taking the right distance. You want to orbit the planet. You want in the right gravity. You don't want to be too close, and you don't want to be too far either.
But this is also something that you and I together are very good at.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just crews because we have very broad relationships with people all over Thailand, is that we have this, like, no you can't have me thing.
Right.
But I'm still benefiting you for this other thing. Like, it's...
we try to give extra shine to everybody without requiring a deep return investment.
It's this, like, you don't get to have exclusivity with me, but you're still getting good things. Like, you're still profiting off of me being diversified. Totally.
That's not something that I think a lot of people can reach for, but it's what we reach for, and it's part of this idea of, like, paying back to crews and gyms and everything else. We try to, like, overpay back.
Yeah.
A field of merit is the concept that we move from. All right. Have we covered that good enough, do you think? Read the article, ask questions on Facebook or something like that. This is a very deep thing that happens a lot in Thailand. It doesn't mean that there are not women that have come to Thailand, had non-romantic, close, developmental connections with their crews, fought a lot. Yeah, it doesn't mean it never happened.
Right.
In those cases, it means those crews were able to fucking find the sweet spot. And usually, Western crews that have dealt with serious female fighters and not gotten romantically entangled, those are probably people that know how to handle this Kru Syndrome much better. Right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to stop this and go to the next segment. Alright. Okay, next segment. Switching things up. The way we're going to enter this subject is the book that we've been reading. I don't even have the title, right?
I don't think I know
The Rise of Superman is the subtitle.
Okay.
And it's something like The Science of Flow.
Yeah.
It's...
You found this because of that adventure.
Joe Rogan had a recent interview with a 33-year-old guy who set a record crossing Antarctic, and somehow this subject of the flow came about. And we've run into the concept of flow before.
I think most people are pretty familiar with the term.
Yeah, but in case you aren't familiar with the term, it's an optimal state of performance that human beings enter, where time slows down. Everyone's experienced it in their life. Often it occurs in times of emergency, like a car crash or something like that. Time slows down. The mind thinks incredibly clearly and is able to problem solve
intuitive.
At a really high but intuitive level. This book, we bought the book, it was only 99 cents on Kindle. I don't know why it was, maybe it was a special that Amazon targeted us with. But we bought the book and we started reading it out loud to each other on the trip driving up to Chiang Mai. It's really good, right?
Very good. Yeah.
It's really good. It follows he's tracking the science of flow. Like, he's really interested in the brain states that athletes and others get into when they go into flow. What parts of the brain are firing and what parts of the brain aren't firing. As he explains, it was assumed that the parts of the brain that were really firing would be all the decision-making parts in the frontal cortex, but actually they discovered that parts of the brain that are firing are actually not those, and that some of the most critical thinking aspects of the brain are shut off.
It actually shuts down the logic.
Parts of the logic and the reasoning thing. This goes into, for those that follow us, we did a group reading of Inner Game of Tennis, which talks about, as an athlete, you want to mentally get to turning yourself over to self-2, which are basically your bodily intuitional instincts, and turn off your critical brain, which is your loudmouth, announcer, inner coach.
You've heard it.
Yeah. So this book about flow, if you can go to Patreon, and we did a reading group together, which was pretty cool, where we'd read a chapter, two chapters.
Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah, we'd read 2 chapters, and then we'd get on a conference call with other patrons, and we would just talk about those chapters. We put the video of that up on Patreon, so you can go and read the book now, and then be part of our conversations. The last 2 chapters, that video I haven't put up yet. I'm going to put it up if you're waiting for it. I just have not put it up yet. And there's even a Facebook group that we started, which was Muay Thai mental training, right?
Okay.
Where mental training resources can be found. In any case, the book is really cool because it's starting to get us to think about
the flow book.
The flow book, yeah. Actually, they're both books.
Yeah.
So cool. We're not finished with the flow book, but it's getting us to think about things we were already thinking about, right?
Yes.
And what's kind of cool about it is that it connects up with something else Sylvie's been doing, taking very seriously, which is Vipassana.
Well, even with Inner Game of Tennis, in our reading group, I brought up Vipassana a lot because this separation of self 1, self 2 tracks beautifully well with Vipassana meditation, which is a particular what would you call
It's a
it?
Buddhist meditation practice,
But it's
right?
a kind of practice. So a lot of people who meditate take as their object of focus breath, for example. So you focus on the breath, you're counting the breath, you're really, really
Trying to get very
keying into
zoned, right? Yeah.
the in and the out. So that's your object of focus. Sometimes you're trying to achieve some kind of like tranquility or state that's kind of twilightish or something.
Well,
Let
me jump in for a second.
Why?
Because if we're losing people,
Okay.
what this ultimately is about mental training for Muay Thai performance. So we're going to talk about big ideas and concepts, but ultimately we're going to get it to why this is connected to Muay Thai. I know you're pissed that I interrupted you, but I'm also thinking about people that might be like, oh, I want to jump ahead 20 minutes. Okay, help me, babe.
So, why Vipassana is, for me, better than breath work, even though breathing is important, is that your object that you're focusing on is the body, which is very good for athletes because you are focused on your body while you are training a lot. But you don't want to be over-focused on the body. And the interesting thing about Vipassana is that you have two objects of focus. One is the body, which is kind of like a doll. Like, it's not you. You're looking at it in positions, so seated, standing, lying down, or walking.
Okay.
And then the second one is the mind, but again, the mind is not you. So you see the mind as being a sense receptor as well as what knows. So by separating those things out, why it works so well for training and for athletes is that you can be aware of what your body is doing without constantly trying to manipulate what the body is doing. And you can be aware of what the mind is doing without constantly getting on your own case about why your mind is doing that. Because the mind in a natural state can be very self-critical.
So in Vipassana, it kind of like cuts out the critical meta comment that can be very detrimental. Oh, we have a check here. 1 second. That can be detrimental to performance. You don't want to be overly criticizing your kick or how you're on the pads, and you also don't want to be criticizing the fact you might be criticizing,
right?
Because that can be a endless loop of stress.
But when you practice Vipassana, when you actually get into the parts where you're like, I'm doing this kind of correctly, you enter into what is very similar to, if not the same as, flow of what's described by these, they're extreme athletes.
Well, let's take a little side turn. So in the book, he's really concentrated on examples of flow experienced by extreme athletes, the kinds of people who are like base jumpers or X game skateboarders. What's his name? Danny Way, who
jumped the Great Wall of China.
Broke his ankle and then jumped the Great Wall of China 5 times. Like these incredible, and also people that have life-threatening experiences, like falling down a mountain. That these people talk about getting into extreme states of flow. And his theory seems to be that the fact that they're risking their life, like some rock face climbers, if they make a wrong move, they die. The danger of their acts seems to be triggering flow experiences at a very deep level, which he compares to monks meditating, like meaning of life type experiences, where everything slows down, your sense of a boundary between yourself and the world dissolves. And so he's turned to extreme examples so that we can even get an idea of what flow is. And when they're describing these things, you're like, yeah, that's Vipassana,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that's the connection that we kind of feel between the book and something you've already been practicing, and you've gone to Vipassana retreats 2 times now, 3 times?
I think 3.
3 times, right. What I'd like to ask you about or think about is, and you're just like touching on this, like people spend 10 years, 40 years practicing Vipassana. What do you feel, you're just starting, right? Like a year now. What do you feel like is the potential for thinking about flow training? and Vipassana training as a fighter, because it feels like the goal really should be to get better and better at staying in flow, getting into deeper flow. Like, that should be a major goal of training in the gym.
Yeah. The similarity or the difficulty, both in Vipassana and in flow, is that you can't... Okay.
Is it going?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So
we switched places.
We had to switch places, and the camera had to be restarted. What we were talking about was Vipassana and flow state theory, and how it might relate to Muay Thai training and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget where we were at. Do you have a feeling about that?
I think I was talking about how Vipassana works with training Muay Thai, because in both cases you're not like, I'm just going to go into flow state now. With Vipassana, because you're trying to catch the present moment by watching the body and the mind, it's not like you're doing it just by watching the breath. Like, in meditation, you're just doing it.
Okay, but how do you feel like most of the people watching this have not practiced Vipassana? They never heard of it before. When you're trying to bring Vipassana type states or realizations or skills into the gym, like literally I walk into the gym, a lot of your routine is something that you've worked many years in. How do you feel like this could potentially refresh or intensify or make more efficient your training process? Because the idea maybe is, if I train a certain way, then I'll get to those states also when I'm fighting. Or have you not thought about it?
I think that they map on top of each other. I think that when you and I call it on the rope or off the rope. So basically, you fall off the rope all the time.
So what's on the rope?
On the rope is catching the present moment. It's being able to not identify with the body or the mind as I. And it's actually really hard to do. Okay. So I go for these 3-day meditation retreats, and for like 10 minutes out of the 3 days, I might be on the rope.
Right.
But like inner game of tennis, you cannot try. You can't be like trying to do something, because there's a tension in that. Okay. So the thing is, you just recognize whether you're on the rope or off the rope, and when you're off the rope, it's not like, oh my god, I suck, all this stuff. You just get back on the rope.
So what does on the rope look like in bat work, or in bag work, or pad work, or shadow boxing? Like, how do they connect up, or maybe they don't connect up?
They don't, but it's
okay.
The same thing. It's the same tension of when you're trying to focus on the object of the body and your mind is wandering, or you're like, I'm not in the right state, or you have this like dialogue going on of the tension of trying that keeps you from being able to do it, is the same mind that's keeping you from your practice being more meaningful in training, which is you're not turning your foot, you're not hitting as hard as you want to, you're not doing this, like you have to become practiced in this non-tense release, and it is the same in Vipassana as it is in training, and it is equally elusive in Vipassana as it is in training. So getting good at it in one place helps you get good at it in the other place.
This is what was interesting to me about in the book.
Which book? The flow book?
The flow book. From now on, in the book is going to be the flow book. The dorsal lateral cortex, I think that's the name of it, a part of the brain that's right here. He said that magnetic imaging was showing that when people were getting into the flow state, this piece of the brain was becoming dormant. It wasn't firing anymore.
Yeah, got quiet.
Yeah, and this piece of the brain is the critical, judgmental part of the brain, where those kinds of thoughts and mental events happen. So basically, you're turning off your inner coach when you're in flow state. What's interesting to me is, as you're practicing Vipassana, which is a very particular practice, a kind of like focusing of awareness, you must be learning to turn off that piece of the brain, to keep it from firing.
When we were reading those parts of the book where he was describing the state of flow state and meditative states, I was like, that's Vipassana, that's when you're on the road.
But what's interesting to me is that the practice of Vipassana focus is like training a muscle. Like, it's training your brain to take certain states, and to recognize when you're out of them, how to move back into them. Like, a big part of what we think Vipassana is about is moving back into the desired state, recognizing you're not where you want to be and just inching towards that.
Pulling it back.
Yeah, and it seems like if you develop that skill in isolation, in meditation in the morning, and you're taking more time in the morning for your meditation to make your days better, those skills will start to manifest themselves on the bag, in shadow, on pad work.
Well, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
For you as an observer versus me as the experiencer or practicer or something. Since coming back from my last 3-day Vipassana retreat, which was in January, end of January.
Okay.
Or early January.
It doesn't matter. Recently,
For more than a month, I've been doing an hour every morning of Vipassana.
It's fucking incredible.
And you've also seen me in training having more freedoms, maybe. The last time I was clinching and sparring with Carabao, you made a comment. So from your observational perspective of what that has done to me, Vipassana training and maybe flow state in training, what does that look like? Because you've said there's big differences.
Well, one of the differences, and you really have taken it to another level in the last week, is you've made a commitment to not trying to please people, including yourself, and moving towards more autonomy. Like, I think in the flow state, one is incredibly autonomous. They talk about a voice, but the voice isn't a critical voice. It's like, grab that rock ledge, or use yellow paint now. Like, there's just a sense of what you should do next.
It's improvisational,
right. And in your training, it feels like you've made a commitment to just being more autonomous and less critically reflective. My own experience has been that a lot of your training and fighting experiences are done in diagnostic state. Like, a lot of learning can happen in diagnostic state. Diagnostic state to me is like, if you have a computer and there's something wrong, then you run a virus protection program that goes through all the files and looks for shit and edits what's wrong. Diagnostic state's an important skill, but you can't function while in diagnostic state. And I think a lot of people make a mistake of making their training so diagnostic that they never click into performance state. And you really want to get towards that autonomous experience more and more and more. And that's one reason why one of the things we've done is added a lot more sparring, going to Rambas, but trying to get sparring with people that are your size, because you've always sparred with people way bigger than you.
Yeah, so for people who don't follow closely, the reason I go to Rambas for sparring is that at my own gym, there are not boys my size, and I spar against bigger...
it's actually not working.
It's working now.
Yeah. Oh.
I spar against bigger, which causes deformities.
Can you do me a favor and try to straighten that camera? Do you see how it's pointing down? Yeah.
Better?
I think that's better. Yeah, much better. So it's causing deformities,
Basically,
right?
I'm trying to find training partners who are closer to my size.
But
So I go to a different gym that has boys my size.
Yes, but one part of this is to just try to experience sparring without self-criticism,
Right.
and to get more and more a sense of just experience the spatial relations that are happening.
Well, you call it growing eyes.
Growing eyes. Yeah.
So, but to use your question,
Right.
what does it look like that I'm less self-critical or less diagnostic?
I don't know. Very cool thing happened in the last fight against Nong Ben's. We don't really game plan fights or anything like that. You think a lot about stuff, but I was filming the fight, and the fight started, and I'm like, wow, Sylvie's fighting orthodox against a southpaw fighter. We've made a commitment to not fighting orthodox ever for a year, because you got to get comfortable on the southpaw side. And it was so cool to me that you either spontaneously, we later found out it was something you decided in advance, just decided I'm going to fight this fight orthodox. And that the fact we didn't talk about it, the fact that it wasn't a big thing about it, that it was just an autonomous, this is what I'm going to do in this fight. One of the nice things about fighting over 200 fights is you can fight any fucking way you want. Any fight, none of it matters. Yeah. I'm going to fight with my eyes closed.
I'm going to season this cake with nutmeg, because I'm going to make lots of other ones.
Totally. So, I don't know. It strikes me that the book about flow is going much in the direction of things we've already been working for. Growing eyes, becoming more autonomous, cutting down on the self-critical thoughts, letting self 2 take over from the inner game of tennis. I'm excited to finish the book, honestly. I'm hoping that it gives us a sense of what a protocol of training yourself into flow states that can be woven into your training in the gym. My suspicion is you've got so much vocabulary and technique in you, way more than anybody could use in a fight. You should be training flow state all the time in the gym. If you're not training flow state, you're missing out or something. And part of that is growing eyes, like we're talking about. I'm kind of excited about that. How about you?
Yeah, 100%. But the thing about it is you have to understand, I have to understand, one has to understand that flow state is elusive, difficult to achieve. There are tricks into it.
Can you help this camera? It's broke. The rubber band broke.
Alright, so stop.
Is it started?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next subject. We mentioned this in the first podcast, and a few people were tell us more, right? Sylvie has joined, I started a weight loss program, lost about 80 pounds over a year ago, which was basically fasting every other day. For several months, I fasted every other day, and I ate whatever the fuck I wanted the other days. And it was just a way to break down, take off calories. At the time, Sylvie was doing keto, and getting great mental results. And so I'm like, hey, we might as well eat the same things on the days that I'm eating. So then about 6 months ago, I started doing keto diet. We're not going to explain it too much. You can Google it. There's a shitload. It's a very trendy diet.
But on the days that he was eating, it was eating keto rather than eating whatever.
So I still fast, but then on the days that I eat, we both are eating keto.
Right.
And then Sylvie, about a month ago, went and did what I'm doing. So about a month ago, she moved, and I'm calling this fast keto because it has to have a brand name, right?
If you don't name it, does it even exist?
It doesn't even exist. It's that other diet. Or otherwise known as Tom Brady's other diet. You don't like that joke?
Too obscure.
Too obscure. So Sylvie now is doing what I'm doing. We're eating the same way. Eating ketogenic diet, on our days that we feed, right?
Today's a non-feed day.
Yeah, and then fasting, with nothing other than really coffee and water.
And potassium.
And taking potassium and magnesium is a big part of the keto diet, and fasting. You got to supplement it. So whatever. People are saying, tell us more. People are thinking about doing this diet. So maybe we thought we'd talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we're eating and what we're doing. Are we right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you take off on that.
So Kevin and I eat meat. We are not vegetarian or any real restrictions.
Other than what we restrict already.
Well, we restrict carbohydrates is what we restrict. But so the thing that I think people misunderstand about the keto diet when they first start, and I think was part of the calibration I personally had to do when I started, is that people call it a low carb diet. It is a high fat diet. Like, you need to be eating fat all the time. Like, you need to be focusing on fat. Any of the carbs that you're eating, you're not really purposefully looking for what are my carbs going to be. You don't calculate it out. They're all kind of like incidental. So there are pieces of carbs in the vegetables that you have in a salad or in whatever the thing is, but you are not like, what are my carbs for today? You're like,
but I would
taking tiny
I would
pieces.
jump in and say that when you start the keto diet, you got to count everything.
Totally, because you're not used to it.
You're not used to even thinking about how much should I be having heavy cream instead of milk.
Yes.
Right? Which is, yes, you should be having heavy cream.
You actually can't really have milk.
Can't have milk. No, it's weird. It's like a sugar.
We used to drink a lot of lattes,
like
and we can't drink
Coca-Cola.
lattes anymore. But, so, like, yesterday, for example, was a day that we ate. We didn't eat until about 11:30 or something. So even though we fasted the entire day before, so we're going on like 30 hours of not eating.
Yeah.
When you wake up, you're not super hungry, so it's not like I have to eat right away.
It's a very weird thing.
It's strange.
Right. We are really way into our coffee, though.
Yeah.
When you wake up.
Immediately.
Yeah.
So with our coffee, we have heavy cream. We put butter in it, and so that's a lot of what we consume on eat days. And then we had like burger meat with no bun.
Burger meat, yeah, a hamburger without a bun.
And like
it was a bacon burger.
Bacon burger with cheese and like a big Greek salad.
Totally. Now the Greek salad, I don't know how many carbs are in it. One of the things about eating keto over a long period of time is I think you develop an ability to take a few more carbs than the 30 that are recommended and stay in ketosis.
Yeah, it's supposed to be under 20 for like actual definitional.
Yeah. You see various things. Some people say under 30, some people say under 50, some people say under 20.
If you're very athletic and active, you can go up to 100, like whatever. We don't aim for that. We aim for as low as possible.
Yeah, I would say that if you're interested in starting the diet, you should get the ketone pea strips and make sure you're staying in ketosis.
Yeah.
Right, even mild ketosis, right?
Another thing about ketosis is that it in and of itself is not healthy. Like it's a metabolic state.
That's not a way to say that, baby.
Being
in not healthy means unhealthy.
Okay, being in ketosis.
Oh wait, let's get this. Do we have a thing?
I don't.
Okay.
Being in ketosis is not like if I just stay in ketosis, everything's great. You do also need to be healthy about the fats that you're eating. You don't want to be like eating only bacon
Crisco
and
like gobs of Crisco.
Kevin's making fun of me because as a kid I ate Crisco because I thought it was awesome that it didn't taste like anything. Yum. But trying to eat like real foods. So
you're talking in generalities. What do you?
I'm talking in generalities. You
Yeah.
still want to eat healthy. You want good fats. You want to pay attention to. We eat a lot of animal fats, so we've been trying to get more omega-3s. So like fish oil. I eat avocado oil. Kevin doesn't.
No.
But you have to read this stuff. Like you can't do keto without doing a lot of reading. Like it actually requires a lot of
talk about what you eat.
Research.
Like typically, what do you eat?
If I get somdam, which is a Thai green papaya salad, so it's basically like very sour kind of probably if you got it regular, it would have like 50 grams of carbs in it because they put sugar in it. So I order it without sugar, and then I douse it in avocado oil so that I get a lot of fat with it. I'll eat that, and eggs, like sunny side up eggs, because I like the runny yolks. We eat a lot of Greek salad because we like the taste of it. We have that for breakfast quite a lot in Pattaya.
Right.
And the feta cheese is low in carb, pretty good, and you can put a lot of olive oil on it, so that's a way to get fat. It's basically like adding fat to things that
are low carb.
Yeah. So,
let's
butter. Put butter on everything.
Let's bend this back to Muay Thai, though, because that's what the podcast is about. The feeling is that this changes your body composition, makes you lean and strong.
The thing we talked about last time is that my energy levels are more even.
Physical energy. Yeah.
My mental stability is much better.
And for you, the mental dimension of rebounding off of negative thoughts.
And for you too, because you live with me, so my mental stability is good for Kevin too.
It's our stability.
Our not you.
Our not you. Okay, that's enough on keto. If you have questions about keto, fire them. I don't know how to really cover this in the podcast that much because we're just kind of rambling about a diet. There's so much to read about it. I personally feel that by moving the body towards its evolutionary benefits that were attained through your ancestors surviving through famine, which means they probably developed anti-inflammatory responses, repair mechanisms, autophagy, all these things that allowed your ancestors to survive through famine and not be killed by famine, probably have given you kind of like slightly superhuman powers to recover from stresses, whether your stress is in the gym or it's in a fucking like work environment of the awful life of cubicalism.
For the mental thing for me, because I really started doing this for the emotional, mental advantages, is that you still have mental difficulties. You still get upset about the same things that you've worn grooves to be upset about. But I use this phrase, throwing gutter balls, which is that you have dug these trenches emotionally in your brain, these pathways that it is very easy to throw your ball into and just get stuck in. Yeah. And so things that would cause emotional distress for me at the gym, sparring, not doing well in pad work, being ignored by my trainer, like any of these things that would just put me in a rut of feeling like shit because I've practiced feeling like shit about those things. When you're a kid and you go bowling, you can put bumpers in the gutters so that when you throw the ball, it'll bounce off the gutters and you'll hit something at the end of the thing. This, to me, what I've experienced in staying in keto is that I still have these grooves. Like, I've worn them for years and years and years, but I tend to not go into those pits. I can rebound out of them better. Yeah, I stay in them for less time. I kind of like toe the end of it, and then I'm like, I'm not going to get that upset about it.
That's the big, from me on the outside, that's the biggest, huge difference, is that when you valley down, one, you don't usually go as deep as you often had in the past, but your response time, where you get back on the rope, is way different. Like,
well, you were talking about since doing every other day fasting, which I've actually been fasted on my last 3 or 4 fights.
Yeah.
My emotional state crazy. After my fights has been very different.
Oh my God. We were talking about last night. Even after wins, Sylvie would feel bad because, I won, but I didn't.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Jumping back on the topic we just had, we had to stop the thing for a second. One of the things we noticed about fasting was the response that you were having to fasted fights. Like, not only was your energy level completely fine in the fight, which is a concern of people, the old glycogen stores crew. After the fight, the last fight you had with Dong Ben's, I was stunned, like, several hours later, how you won that fight, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I won that fight.
What normally happens after winning a fight for you?
I feel good for a few hours, or even directly after the fight, I'm immediately critical of the things that I had wanted to do and didn't. Like, oh, yeah, I won, but I was trying to do these things. Like, there's a manic feeling after fights, either good or bad. And then even if I feel good, there's definitely a, like, come down.
Crash. There's like a crash that you felt.
It's a post-fight blues.
Yeah. Even if you win. Last night fight you won, I was like, we were driving around Chiang Mai getting some things done after the fight, and I was like, I've never felt Sylvie like this after a fight, a few hours. Like, it was just a normal day. Like, we were going to go do stuff at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I don't know what keto and fasting is doing to allow that. Part of it I'm going to totally credit with your Vipassana work, that your Vipassana also is about emotion leveling and not being too reactive. So there might be something that's working together from fasting and Vipassana. But I think there's brain chemistry shit going on with fasting that made you in just an incredibly nice level result of a big fight. Like, that was a big win.
That was a big, yeah.
Right? But there was no up and down that came after it.
And there was a lot of emotional, mental stuff going into the fight as well, because the last time I fought her, I was under incredible stress. I was really sick, and then I was, the way that I felt after losing was fucking
terrible.
Panic mode mentally. I was very embarrassed by the fight. All of the things that went into making it difficult just kind of like weighed in and stayed with me. I kept my being upset about that fight for a very long time.
You took it right into the Tananchana fight.
So not only is it that not only was it that I was better and more even keel after this fight, but going into it, I think I was more.
Oh, way more. As a matter of fact, when you knocked her out with that right hand, you had never. One time have you knocked somebody out with a right hand, and you have a very powerful right hand. You just don't believe in it. Yeah. You don't believe in it at this point. But maybe you're starting to believe in it, and maybe there was something about your relaxation in the fight that allowed you to access a vocabulary of actions that you wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, people talk a lot about they hack the body and get the body to the highest level of performance physically, as if it's a fucking Ferrari, right? If your mind is in the right place, you are way better off than if your body is at 75%. Yeah. And I think the body is at 100% in fasting, but even if it was at 75%, if your mind is in the right place, take it every time, right?
Yeah, and it keys into what we were talking about just before about flow, is that there are elements of that fight where I was in.
You were in flow. No, you were in flow. Yeah. Like, that right hand came out so short and unstressed and accurate. That was flow.
Can he still be a puncher?
Yeah. And well, let's talk about a little bit about the flow, and maybe the fasted state was connected, was that you actually performed in the fight things that you had trained 2 weeks before the fight.
Well, this was crazy.
And we can go into the diesel noise thing right now.
So, from a personal experience, I've fought a few times. I have some experience in fighting. I've experienced a diversity of things in fights.
Right.
Including food poisoning, flus, like anything that's like, this is a non-ideal situation I've experienced in fights. Broken bones. Is that something that I experience a lot of, which I don't like and I'm trying to get away from, is that in fights I have that internal coach, that critical, like, what do I do? Telling myself go as though that's actually instruction of any kind. This why aren't you doing this? You practice this, all this stuff. My corner will tell me to do something between rounds, and I'm like, yeah, and then I forget it the second I get back under the pressure of the fight. What was kind of amazing in this one was that Diesel Noise at my gym for a month, and he's been working with me because he loves me.
Right.
And he was showing me something that he wanted me to do, which was when you're in the clinch, and instead of like grinding against your opponent in the ropes or whatever the thing is, because I fight people who are bigger than me, you disengage and low kick from really, really close.
And he designed this because he watched you fight Nong Bens in person. He was at that fight, and he was really pissed at the ref who was breaking the clinch very, very fast. And we know that in Chiang Mai, there are times where they're like, Sylvie's not going to win. We're like, we're not going to let her clinch.
The way a fight goes can depend strongly on a ref. Well, it's not 100% at all, but they can influence.
But especially when it's like a clinch fighter versus a femur fighter.
Yes.
Because the ref can determine how long a clinch will last, and when a ref just to explain, when a ref breaks the clinch, what the ref is saying publicly is that was not effective. Right. Like, it has now reached a point of ineffectiveness or whatever that is. And because a femur fighter is always trying to make the clincher look ineffective, they don't have to actually score. They just want to make the clinch fighter look unpowerful. Right? So every time the ref comes in, it's actually a point for the femur fighter. So
Diesel Noy's edition of this disengaged low kick grab again, or whatever the thing is basically, hey Sylvie, they're not going to let you clinch. Here's something you can do to change that, or to score with them not letting you clinch, or to disengage, re-engage, all these things. So what I was talking about is that this is something that Diesel Noy showed me in the last week before my fight. It's not something I had a lot of experience training
at all.
And in the fight, under pressure, when I was trying to clinch Nong Bens, who's bigger than me, and she was starting to go into the ropes, which has been a problem for me because they just use their size in the ropes, and I kind of like grind into it.
Well, talk about that one moment. What happened? Like, slow down. I'm just saying, let's go into slow motion. You were clinched up with her. You told me that you started feeling her drifting.
She was drifting into the ropes, which then means I have to pull her off of the ropes, but I was leaning in such a way that I was kind of grinding into her. I was doing what Diesel Noy says don't do. Don't just be the farang who like pushes hard into the person leaning into the ropes to make you look ineffective, to like stagnate you. And instead of having this like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, what do I do thing, there was this very calm like, oh, this is exactly what I've been training this technique for. And I was able to feel it, acknowledge it, remember what I'm supposed to be doing, and then do it without any kind of like,
without any coach
verbal
saying it, right?
Freaking out, do it. It was just like, I just was like, oh, push.
You described it kind of like a moment of recognition, like almost like I've seen this.
What I actually compared it to when we were talking about it the other night is it's like when you solve a riddle. Like, you're like, oh, I know this one, or I've heard this one, or like, oh, I know the key to that.
Like finishing the joke that you've heard before.
Right, because it's like, it's slightly referential.
Yeah.
But we were reading that chapter in the flow book, and it was saying that the logical part of your brain fires really close together. So you take information that's really close together, and it's tight stitches. The flow state actually takes abstract things and draws them together. So it's like,
or disparate from different parts of the brain.
So it's like this thing that's immediately happening does not have to be literally interpreted. I have references that can be drawn for creativity. So you have this quick, intuitional and improvisational problem solving.
It's so interesting, because we learned at a certain point that if there was anything that you wanted to do, you couldn't tell yourself before a fight, do this.
If I wanted to left hook in a fight, if I wanted to do it, guarantee that I will not throw a single left hook. I'll throw everything else.
Especially if you told yourself left hook in this fight. Like, if you put it on the menu to do, it literally would not happen.
Will not happen.
Which was incredible. So we figured this out at some point, and so things we wanted to happen, you don't put them on a menu. Yeah. But this is the so interesting thing. Diesel Noi comes and like trains you up with a little technique, which is fucking a beautiful, awesome technique, even if it wasn't you. Like, you guys, we filmed a pad work session with Diesel Noi, him teaching this. We're gonna put it up on YouTube with a voiceover. It's pretty amazing. He fucking put these Fairtex thigh pads on, which he's never worn. And put the belly pad on. Oh my god. And he's teaching this thing to Sylvie. It's kind of cool. That in the past, if that had happened, and then you're like, well, I gotta do this in my fight, a legend has just taught me this, it would never have happened.
Yep.
And then somehow, we're reaching different states of mind, which are, like you're saying, like into improvisational, that somehow your mind opened to the reference of it.
Mm-hmm.
Calm. And another thing you did in that fight was you started doing the plum crank, which is not something that you've done out of the lock position. You almost knocked her out with that position as well. It's kind of like, I don't know, it was a very beautiful fight for me to watch, because you also made a lot of old guttering mistakes, like things that you normally do that might sink you, but then you would adjust out of it. And it's like, it's beautiful that there are mistakes too.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you got to fight the perfect fight, you know, like there's people that think about things in that way. Are we on the right road, baby?
Yes.
Oh, good. So, circling back, what is the story? What was it? What were you talking about?
We're talking about keto.
So the maybe diet and fasting is contributing to this clarity of mind and this flow state pursuit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Let's go to the next session. All right, on to the next segment. This last bit, somebody asked about. We want to talk about my photography.
Kevin's photography is amazing.
Project to the mic. Say that louder.
Kevin's photography is amazing.
Just so you know, it's taken me by serious surprise that the photographs that are coming out. Why are you laughing at me? Why are you laughing at me?
Because it's true. You're like, why are my photos so good? And we're like, I don't know.
It's fucking
They're
weird.
incredible.
It's very weird. But just so you know, at some point, maybe about 6 months ago, we just realized we have to increase the quality of the content. Oh, I know where it came from. For the quality of content for our patrons. Our patrons are so generous and so supportive. And we also realize that we're making historic videos, like videos that are going to be seen 50 years from now, of these legends that are no longer going to be with us. Eventually, at some point, they'll stop teaching before that. And I'm like, okay, so we just have to get better. We get better sound equipment. We've bought upgrades in sound equipment, and we wanted to get a better camera so that the video quality goes up. And part of that also was wanting to get a wider lens. So we got a Fujifilm camera, the X-T3, which is a newly released fairly newly released. It's one of the best cameras out there for the kinds of work that we're doing. And we then, on top of that, got a new Fuji film wide-angle lens, which we're shooting with now. The idea behind it was to, I'm going on a loop here. The idea behind it was to, when we film, to be able to capture more of the action, even though sometimes we have to stand with the camera close to people to get audio. So anyways, help me, save me on this. I'm
part of
getting
it is
lost.
Solving problems.
Yes.
And part of it is, hey, we have this incredibly rare opportunity, and this is going to be the only footage of, or photos of, or whatever, these incredible legends.
Yes.
And so it's like, not only is it solving a problem, but it's honoring the rarity and experience of being able to deal with them. So having like a fine art photo of Diesel Noi's knee does not exist anywhere.
Well, this is where it went to the next thing. We got a nice camera, and suddenly it's like, well, if you're going to have very high quality equipment, you got to know what the fuck you're doing with it. And I'm not a cameraman. I'm not a video editor. Like, these are not things that I have spent a lot of time with.
Kevin teaches himself how to do things in order to keep up with our growing creativity.
Aims, yeah, right. And so I'm like, I've got to get serious about photography if we're going to actually have the capability of making really nice photographs. And it suddenly struck me in a very powerful way that when we had kind of like ordered the wide-angle lens, that Muay Thai photography is almost always shot with this like close, zoomy kind of photographic intensity, where everybody's trying to capture the like intensity, the close range intensity of whatever's happening.
Which is beautiful at times, but it doesn't feel like what it actually feels like to watch Muay Thai.
Or Muay Thai training.
It somehow betrays the beautiful experience of like the whole thing. Like zeroing in on the knee making impact actually doesn't feel like what the fight felt like.
Yeah, when you watch a fight, you get you have the fighters, but they're in the context of this ring, this open space. It would be like if you only knew soccer from close-ups of faces and balls being kicked by feet, right?
Yeah.
But the beauty of soccer is how it flows on a wide open zone.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that when we get this wide-angle lens, that we have to start shooting the Muay Thai subject in a broader context. And not all of my photos are like that. Sometimes I frame up close, but I really, with my photography, suddenly wanted to like explore shooting Muay Thai in a different way than the genre does anymore, or ever did, right? And so you guys can go over to my Instagram. We'll put a link to it. You can check out what I'm doing and see how enjoyable it is for you. I've also spent a lot more time in Lightroom and the developing process.
Well, talk about this project that you did of Sawsing Fight. You're turning left after this bridge.
Oh, thank you. Well, I didn't start out doing a project. I was just photographing Sawsing fighting, and I had a very powerful experience of watching her fight. I'd like to write a blog post or something about that fight. It was pretty cool. But the photos that came out of it captured a lot of what I was feeling when I was watching her. And so then I stitched them together in a video. They're on YouTube. Put some music to it. But this kind of like feeling of ascension of the fighter into these performative states that are really, really beautiful and unique to Thailand, I think. I don't know. Is that what you're asking?
There was also, in this same vein of trying to capture more of the context around something, part of what was in those photos as a series was kind of the greater context of a fighter. So you have the warming up scenes with those incredible, almost indescribable festival lights that we've been around for 9 years now, and we like still find incredible. And then her interactions with Dorsal, and when she gets in the ring, the faces of the young fighters, the women who look up to Sawsing.
Oh, yeah, that was beautiful.
You cannot fully grasp Sawsing without those faces, without this broad, like, her in the ring, the, like, quiet in her face, and then the, like, tension in her face when she's getting in her zones. And you have to go close and pull out in order to get all of Sawsing.
Yeah. And I'm really impacted by, like, her bows into the corner.
Yeah,
like, and on the step. So she bows so deep and so, like, she's surrendering to the performativity of the act of fighting. Like, we in the West are like, count the points of damage. That's the real badass way, right? There is a performativity to Muay Thai that in Thailand evokes very meaningful and powerful dimensions of what humanity is.
Yeah, you actually didn't photograph any strikes.
Not a single strike was photographed.
And yet the story of the
and
fight
I didn't even, I don't think I even edited out strike photos. Like, I don't think I even snapped a single one. Because in a way, in photographing that fight, there was a feeling of like a fight is everything that happens outside of strikes, between strikes. But somehow in her bows and her surrendering to this performative dimension, because she goes so low in the corner, she like surrenders to it. To me, it also is the reason why she can surrender to throwing an elbow viciously. Yeah. Like, she is giving herself over to the technique, just like she's giving herself over to the bow and to the corner. Like, there's a dimension there that is very, very admirable, and I hope it's in those photos. But I don't know. In general, I feel like there's a whole dimension that's coming out with this photography that I don't even know where it's going, but I'm kind of excited by it. And it's part of our patron journey of like trying to capture as much of Thailand as possible.
And leveling up.
Which is what you're trying to do with yourself as a fighter too, is just level up.
Yeah.
How much time do we have on this? Our timer? 15 minutes. Talk a little bit. I'm going to throw. We didn't even know we're going to talk about this, but part of this is the curveball section. This is when the title curveball comes spiraling across the screen, right? But you know what? I want this thing to get more than just planned talks. Tell me a little bit about your responses to David Goggins' "You Can't Hurt Me," which are also another book that you're reading at the same time. And your thoughts about Goggins also, because, you know, there are some things that he is that connects up with you, right?
Yeah.
Is that too much of a curveball?
It is a huge curveball. Not because I don't have thoughts about it, but because...
Talking to the mic.
When I speak candidly about these things, I include negative aspects as well.
That's okay.
I like David Goggins. I'm very inspired by him. I like his super high intensity, and that he does not expect people to match him. He just expects people to match whatever their level of intensity is. I like that he demands that of people who he doesn't know.
Right.
I have his book. It's actually his book. Everyone has recommended I get the audio.
So you don't need to recommend that in comments. Everybody's like, get the audio.
I know it's awesome. I have not heard it. This was a gift to me by Xavier, who came and trained with me about a month ago. He accidentally bought 2 of the books and sent me one because he's so fucking nice and awesome. Yeah. So I've been reading it, and I was a little bit unsure of what to expect out of it, because I've listened to David Goggins in long interviews, and his story has become very repetitive.
Because he gets asked the same questions, right?
It's the same thing. It's like if you watched every interview with Jack Nicholson leading into a movie, you get the same things. So I was surprised that in the earlier chapters he gives a little bit more of his background, and there were elements of it that I found of greater inspiration from things that I've heard from him before. And now he's getting more into the part of the story that I'm more familiar with, and offering small pieces of new elements that are interesting, but I'm a little bit slogging through early chapters. But parts of what I really like, these little pieces to grab onto, are these little glimpses into...
Jump in there, baby.
What makes him how he is. Like, the first time we were listening to a podcast with him, I said something about how I thought he was like me, in that his self-hatred and self-harshness is required for making him do the things that he does. And that's very difficult, to require your dark passenger to be a fucking asshole in order to achieve the things that you achieve. You can't be like a happy-go-lucky dude and like do what he does.
Right.
But there are also elements of him that the question of like, how does that drive you? Because it doesn't necessarily drive me. Like it
playing with the dark passenger can also have adverse effects.
Yes.
And is not entirely sure. Like, I don't know if David Goggins talks about his adverse effects as much as he experiences them, right? And then it's not entirely sure how he's like created this reversal.
Yeah.
This mind dissecting reversal. He clearly at some point took a lot of the energies that were crushing him and flipped them.
Yes.
And you have a sense of how that might be, but it's not exactly clear how that works, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting to investigate.
Yes.
You can learn a lot from people who are not like you, and you can learn a lot from people who are like you, but have taken slightly different approaches to it, or paths, or whatever these things are. I really like about him, and this is maybe my favorite thing about him, is that he is disgusted by this, I did this amazing thing and then can just live off it the rest of my life. You graduated from SEAL training, which is like this huge achievement, and you get the certificate or whatever the thing is, and then you get the like badge of honor that you went through this hard thing, and you just kind of talk about it the rest of your life. He's like, you do it 3 times, or you just move to the next thing. Like you basically don't get to stay champion without fighting. Like you have to keep, and this is a Diesel Noi thing.
Yes.
Diesel Noi, with the same kind of sneer disgust, is like, you don't get to be like, oh, that guy doesn't have to train hard because he's champion. He's like, you have to train like Diesel Noi because you're champion and there are people coming after you. Like, now you have to fight the best of the best, rather than like, oh, well, now I can just pick. Like, you don't get to feed off of past achievements. You have to top yourself all the time, and I like that.
That was one of the things that blew our mind in that Danny Way story that's in the Superman Flow book, was this story about him like setting up this giant 100-foot ramp to jump over the Great Wall of China
at its widest part.
Yeah, and a 40-foot clearance, and just fucking crazy thing. And then he does a practice run, and he breaks his ankle, right? And so, first of all, the thing's probably not going to happen. They recalibrate the ramp, and he's going to try it the next day. He fucking clears the thing. He hits
on a broken ankle.
On a broken ankle. There is no reason for him not to, at that point, just be like,
I did it.
No one will ever do it. Fucking, I got my belt, whatever the crappy thing is, that is like the thing that allows you to quit with honor, like complete honor. And he decides to do it again and again, and he did it 5 times. And there's something about someone who's driven like way beyond the thing, that it's perfectly, no one would call you a coward or not awesome if you quit right now.
But it kind
There's something insane about that.
It ties into that mountaineer guy.
Who's
There's
the
this guy who's a mountain climber, and he does
in that book?
Free form. He doesn't use ropes. If you fall, you die. Like all this stuff. And he acknowledges and talks pretty openly about how he's chasing the flow state, or his connection to this voice that he says he has. Is that he's like, that's what I'm doing when I'm doing these extreme things. He's like, I definitely don't climb to get on top of rocks. And that's the thing that Danny Way is doing. He's not doing this skateboard trick to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, or to like clear the wall.
Or get his back pat by his peers, which would be a worthy thing.
He's doing it to
it's incredible.
Something insane.
This is the thing, Sylvie. I mean, like, a lot of this, like 50 fights, 100 fights, 200 fights, now 471 fights, was just to like ratchet up and just get better. Like, to set goals that require that if I do this, I will just get better by doing it. So the goal really wasn't 50 or 100 fights. It's like, if I cross that space, I just know that I will have devoted myself to something I love. If you're like, I just want to win the WMC blah 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 belt, whatever, or the gold medal or whatever it is, there's no real guarantee that you'll be better.
Well, there are many examples of people. Ronda Rousey talks about it in her book, which is that she did medal, and it changed nothing.
Yeah. And this is the crazy thing when people are like, maybe as a way to let people know why you're pursuing 471 fights, it's like, which would be the greatest recorded, documented number of professional fights in the history of the world as far as anyone can tell. So 471 fights. It's because it's absurd. It's because it throws you into states of mind that are of such magnitude that you have got to transform yourself. You cannot reach that from what you are now, right? And so for Danny, when he fucking jumped that wall, it wasn't about jumping the wall. It was about the transformation that was necessary to do that. And he's right there, and he's like, let's do it 5 times. It's fucking crazy. Like, there's something so beautiful about that. I don't know. To me, it shines a light onto what some of the motivations of what you're doing, but you're doing it over time, like over a decade.
But it pulls people with you, is what's interesting to me. Like, it's not that interesting to change what people think. It is profound to change how people think.
Yeah.
And I think it changes how people think. To do something insane like that. It's how, in the book, they talk about that Hawaiian surfer who died, and you would think that it would, like a shark, clear the water. Yeah. And instead, it surged.
Yeah, more people surfed it. Yeah. And there is no doubt about it that people think about fighting at high level, high numbers, way differently than they did 5 years ago.
Yes.
Because of what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay, let's stop this. We'll see if there's another segment or not. So that's the conclusion of our second episode, the first road edition, which we kind of hope, we're going to have to see how this looks when we play it back. We kind of hope this will be the regular way of doing Muay Thai bones. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of close to what we do when we talk when we're on the road.
Yeah, we have less of a, like...
We'll get better...
audience when we're talking usually. I cuss less when the camera's on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
A little bit.
Yeah. I will say this also, because we're in the car, it took us a long time before we ever considered renting a car and driving through Thailand. We were fucking, like, bound to the block we lived on in the gym, and it took us a year before we even got on a motorbike in Chiang Mai, which changed everything once we got on a motorbike. We realized what a beautiful city Chiang Mai was and how friendly it was to motorbikes. And then we started renting cars through the help of crowdfunding, basically to get Sylvie to her 50 fight goal, so we can reach...
Which was necessary because we had Jaidee.
Which was... Maybe we should talk about Jaidee too.
And with
sadness, yeah. But I'm going to say, I'm encouraging you guys, if you come to Thailand, even if you're just going to do 2 months at a gym, consider going to Hertz. Actually, Hertz is the one that we found is the best, but there might be other. Rent a car for 3 days. If you have a smartphone, Google Maps will fucking take you anywhere. Like, we have found the most obscure locations fairly dependably through Google Maps. It will change your experience of Thailand to, like, venture out. Yeah. Go to a temple that's 50 kilometers away, or if you're in Chiang Mai, go down to Lampang, visit Arjan Burklerk's gym there. It will just expand your experience. Yeah, it's cool to get on a motorbike, easy to do, but I don't know, we never thought we would get in a car, right? And now we kind of like live in a car.
Our second couch.
And we're now doing a Muay Thai bones from the car, and hopefully we'll be doing more of that. But I just want to say that what part of what you're seeing is something that you guys should consider. Yeah,
and thank you to patrons who make it possible.
And our sponsors too. Knock Boy Nation and Onyx MMA are our official sponsors, and then we have sponsors of the Muay Thai library, which also requires car rental trips.
Yeah.
We have Smack Gym in Australia.
Shikara Martial Arts.
In Australia.
Jay, Sue, and Family.
Jay, Sue, and Family, that's a person, not a business, who wanted to just support the library. If you want to be a sponsor of the library, you can do that as a person.
Bleeding Edge Gear.
And Bleeding Edge Gear, our friend Tim.
We just got a new one who's also an individual person who is currently being anonymous.
Anonymous, you can be an anonymous sponsor. It's $90 a month. It helps out with our expenses and our processes. We've just went and bought interview mics so that we can get better interviews, better audio. So your support, and then as patrons, your support makes all of this possible. We should talk a little moment about Jaidee. Those of you who have been following us, we had a Thai soy dog that Sylvie took from a garbage pile, literally from a garbage pile down the street. When he was a puppy, he was super sweet little baby.
You got to
Crying like a couple of girls.
cry like a couple of girls. He would be panting
Right here,
ruining our sound.
Yeah, that was our sound would be difficult with him. He didn't like the car, but he went with us everywhere. He went to over 100 fights, ringside. A lot of those early fight videos with the horrible shaky cam was because I was like holding the camera and all our gear, so none of it would be stolen. And then Jaidee would be held in my other hand or tied to my waist, and he would be like pulling. He'd be like at my feet or pulling in the tightest crowds of like gamblers when there were sun fights.
Like wiggling under the ring.
Oh, one time he got loose and under the ring, which is incredible. I thought I wasn't going to get him out. During a fight, he got loose under the ring, which is actually a pretty peaceful place for a dog to go.
Yeah.
But anyways, he was a very big part of our experience. And
he was the baby of the family.
Yeah, and he died in a freak situation, off the leash, hit by Rodang by our hotel, and it was it's still a very sad event for us. He added a lot, and people along the way followed what was happening with Jaidee when he was with us, and
he was kind of everyone's dog in a way.
Yeah, and they donated money to help him when he had medical expenses that were difficult to handle, and I don't know what to say. Can you say anything?
Just that Jaidee added a lot to our lives. He shaped our lives in a very strong way. Without him, we are now having our lives shaped in a different way. We're having to reform.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone who loved Jaidee from afar, who asked about him and sent so much love and support when he died. And we miss him a lot, but it's not something that we dwell on because he was such a beautiful part of our lives. Just thinking of him in a sad way does not honor what he truly was to us.
Yeah.
Life goes on. Everyone and everything dies, but he is missed.
Yeah.
And it just feels weird to not talk about him, but it's also not.
Yeah, I also want to say this other little thing about people that maybe are not connected to our lives, but really enjoy our content. Jaidee is the reason the Muay Thai library exists.
That's true. That's true.
It would not be. What happened was when we moved to Pattaya, and we were just changing gyms because we needed to change things up. And we moved to Pattaya, and within a couple of months of moving there, we became aware we're not going to be able to find fights. There's no fight scene down in Pattaya. So we wanted to keep fighting. And Sylvie irrationally out of love, took this puppy home. It was raining that night, and she's like, he's going to be cold in the rain, and we just brought him upstairs. It made no sense to bring him in.
No.
Like, at all.
Talk about responsible decision.
Yeah. But it's like when you make a commitment to something that you love, that you're going to love, some things in your life get hard.
Yeah.
And one of the things that got hard was, how are we ever going to be able to fight anywhere?
Yeah.
And the whole crowdfunding of the fight process started because we were going to need a dependable way to travel with Jaidee, because we didn't actually have friends that could take care of him, and he was very like anxious dog that didn't like to be alone.
Yeah.
We were going to have to travel with him to fights in new locations, and so we raised money so that we could dependably rent a car with Jaidee, and that led to an entire process of discovering a Thailand that's accessible as a Muay Thai process,
and being
with
able
fights.
to travel to find these legends.
And that led to, we could drive and film with a legend. We can go find a legend. We're not located only within motorcycle distance of where we live.
Yeah.
And the whole process of traveling, and we'd always have to stay in these love hotels, because you couldn't really have a dog in it because Thais don't really like dogs indoors. So we'd have to basically often stay in these hotels that were basically short-term hotels,
Short-term.
right? But we have a lot of memories of like plastic on the mattress type hotels. Yeah. But it made us incredibly flexible. So I'm saying you take on an added burden of something you love, and look what comes out of it, right? I don't know. Is there anything else we can say about that? Just thank you, everybody. I guess that's the news from the road. I don't know how often we're going to do these things, but if you enjoyed it, maybe we can do a lot of these.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Signing off, Muay Thai Bones.
Sylvie out.